Actually, today we've reserved this time for Brother Kevin to share with us about what God did in Peru and how He answered our prayers. And so I hope that you'll be prayerful and you'll listen carefully and you will be engaged by the stories he tells, because these are the answers to our prayers. So you be prayerful as Kevin comes and shares with us today. Kevin?
So, thank you for letting me be here today and share with you guys. I've been thinking about this a lot, trying to figure out what exactly I'm going to say and what I'm not going to say. But I want to start with a couple of verses from Psalm 31. And this is a, you'll see later on, I have a video of a man in Peru signing from memory Psalm 31 in its entirety. And this man is not only deaf, but he's almost completely blind. He has very low vision. It's basically he has no peripheral vision, and in order to see, he has to bring things really close up to his eyes. Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna make my phone not go to sleep. Y'all don't be texting me, okay? That'll disturb me. All right. So Psalm 31. In you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be ashamed. In your righteousness, deliver me. Incline your ear to me. Rescue me quickly. Be to me a rock of strength, a stronghold to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress. For your name's sake will you lead me and guide me. So that's the first three verses of Psalm 31. It goes on for 24 verses. But I want to start today by talking about my call to missions. Some of you have heard this before. I've shared a little bit in Sunday school. When I don't remember how old I was, 20. I think I was 20. I went to Laterno University in Longview, Texas. And in the new student orientation, I don't remember anything else about this orientation except they showed a video of mission trips that they took on spring break. And immediately, my heart was like, I'm there. I have to do this. I don't know why, but it was that moment when God said, missions. He spoke it right to my heart. And I turned to my dad who was there and I said, Dad, I got to go on this trip. Will you pay for it? He's like, yeah, well, we'll see. You make good grades. And at that point, that was a challenge for me because I'm not always the most diligent person in school. But that semester, I buckled down. I did pretty well, and I went on my first mission trip to a very small village in Mexico, a tiny village. I mean, there were no paved streets. It was all dirt roads. I remember the most impacting thing about that trip is the family I stayed with. They had a home with a concrete floor. They had one bedroom, but they had 5 children, and their grandmother lived there. And their kitchen was outside, so they cooked outside in a little hut. But when I went there, they let me stay in their home, but they gave me their bed. So the mother, the father, and all the children slept in the big open area in what we would call the living room. And I got to sleep in their bed. And I'm thinking, wow, if you come to my house, I'm going to fix you a really nice pallet on the floor, or I got this cool air mattress I'm going to show you. But that's my bed. But they gave it up for me, and that was one of the most impactful things for me because the folks there, they had very little. But what little they had, they were ready and willing to give it up for us, and that was super awesome. when I'm on mission, and my wife and one of my daughters can attest to this, it's like a switch that's flipped in me, and I am the most Kevin that I can be, the person who I was born and created to be. Like, when I get to Guatemala, I've been to Guatemala twice with you guys. I've been to Haiti a couple of times, and it's just, my purpose, it flows out of me, and I can't help it. And so that initial call to mission was back in '96, and it took a long time for me to go back on a mission trip. Even though constantly in my heart and mind, I was almost always thinking of missions. It wasn't until 2010, after the major earthquake that Haiti experienced, that I was able to go on another mission trip. And I was blessed to go with a dentist, and we went down there and we did some dental work. I did not do the dental work, just to be clear. I did not pull any teeth, but I did clean all the instruments and kept everything sterilized. And then the next year, my wife was able to go with me, which was a major blessing, because even on this trip to Peru, and when I go to Guatemala, the only thing I can think is, man, I wish my wife was here with me, because that would it would multiply the experience that I get. So it took a really long time of preparation, and the preparation, it's like a very windy road for me. I have done so many different things. I've worked at the Apple Store. I've studied computer science. I know computers very well. I have studied biblical counseling and biblical studies at the College of Biblical Studies. I've been a graphic designer. I've been a restaurant manager. I've been a dad. And the whole way I've been picking up these little experiences. And then to top it off, I was brought back to school to learn sign language. And so I was given another tool to use in that seemingly I kind of felt like I was doing just to have a career. But even my wife saw it before I did, that it was going to be part of a ministry. So all of that to say is, I have all of these little snippets of experience that can contribute to the ministry that I want to have. And not only myself, but my wife as well. I mean, she is she won't admit it, but she is an amazing seamstress. She can sew dresses and clothes, and she can sew everything in between. I mean, it's just amazing. Her cooking is phenomenal. She can take a bunch of ingredients and make a wonderful meal out of it. But as I kind of mentioned, it was her that saw the vision before I did. We went to Haiti in 2011, and we were meeting our team. We're supposed to meet them in Miami, and so I had purchased tickets. And a couple of days before, I thought, let me preface this: I am not an organized person by nature. I strive to be, and I know I need to improve that about myself, but I'm typically not very organized. So God prompted me, and I went and I just double-checked our tickets, and I realized I had bought tickets to Miami, or from Miami to Haiti, a day before my team was getting there. And so we were going to drive to Miami to save the money of the flight because it was going to be much cheaper. So we literally threw my kids at my dad and my stepmom. They took our kids, jumped in the van. We had a little thin mattress pad that we put in the back and to sleep. And we drove. It was supposed to be about a 27-hour drive. Ended up being about 30 hours because we didn't have, cool GPS phones like we do now. And I took the inside of Florida instead of going to the other coast. So it took us about 30 hours. Diana was so wonderful. She drove about an hour and a half, which was great. And every time we would switch, I would just be falling asleep and she'd go, Kevin, we got to switch again. I'm like, okay. So I drink another Red Bull. I get back in the driver's seat. So all of that to say, we flew down to Haiti early, and we stayed in, I guess, a convent. Some nuns ran like a hostel type thing where travelers could sleep there. And they were talking about, to us, they were telling us about some nuns that had been working with the deaf and how that was a major need. And Diana saw it right away. So it's like, oh, wow, that could be part of a really cool ministry. I was thinking, oh, yeah, that's neat. Great. Yeah, and I hadn't gone to school to become an interpreter yet. So in my mind, interpreting was just a way to support my family, which was what all of my jobs were. But God had other plans for them. I picked up Spanish in the kitchen of a restaurant. I've never taken a Spanish class. And I was just doing it to pass the time and to have fun and get to know the people I work with. But God used it because now I've been able to go to Spanish-speaking countries and I don't need an interpreter or a translator for the most part. And it was, it's just amazing how all of these little different pieces of the puzzle have come together. So recently, within the last couple of years, Diane and I were talking about our desire to move out of the area we're in, not necessarily Porter New Caney, but specifically the neighborhood we were in. And we had been talking about maybe even moving to Alabama because there is a good need for interpreters in the Birmingham area. So I could actually make a decent living. The cost of living there is a little cheaper. The way of life is much more relaxed as opposed to this area. And so we had been talking about this for a while, and then in Guatemala this last February, I started thinking, I was like, yeah, we should definitely get started on moving. And I went, wait a minute, if we're going to move, why would we move somewhere in the States when what I really want, what I really desire is to be an overseas missionary? And so I told Zach, I told Pastor on the way home, I was like, you know what? I think when I get home, I'm going to tell Diana that we should start our journey into missions, and I did that, and she was, as she always is, super supportive. And so our goal within the next couple of years is to be full-time missionaries somewhere overseas, and whether it be I've had experience in Haiti, I have some contacts down there that. They want me to bring me down there for an exploratory trip there. This trip to Peru was an exploratory trip. So kind of our 2-year plan is to be in full-time missions. And initially I wasn't really, even still today, I wasn't thinking about a ministry per se to the deaf. Because what we do in Guatemala, I love building houses. It's so much fun. It's so rewarding. And if you haven't gone, I encourage you guys to go. I still wasn't thinking about a ministry being to the deaf, but in reality, if you take all of the deaf all around the world and you put them in one group, they are about the 10th or 11th largest unreached people group, meaning the gospel hasn't made it to them or made it to them in their language. And there's about 70 million deaf worldwide, roughly. 80% of those live in developing countries, or what we would call third world countries. And about half of those are children. And my wife makes this point. She said, if you don't know your own name, how can you know the name of Jesus? Because a lot of here let me back up a little. Here in the States, we have all kinds of laws that provide access for deaf folks. They can go to almost any business or corporation or company out there, and that company is required by law to provide interpreters with a few exceptions. They can have interpreters in school. They can have interpreters at the doctor. They can have interpreters at the Social Security office. And I've done all of those different jobs. But in developing countries, they don't have those laws. They do not have laws that protect them and provide access to normal, everyday things that we as hearing people have. Because a lot of deaf folks know very good English, but a lot of them do not. It is a second language for them. And it's a language that, imagine trying to do what this interpreter here is doing without hands. Because that's kind of like what a deaf person trying to learn English is doing, because they can't hear the words. They can see our lips moving, but I don't know if you've ever, go find a video on YouTube and look at a good example would be bad lip reading. Have you guys seen those videos? Because the way our lips move don't always accurately reflect what the words sound like. So having to learn a language that way is much more difficult than getting it in a native language, which a native language to a deaf person is a signed language. So if again, I want to leave you with that statement that my wonderful wife said, if you don't know your own name, how can you know the name of Jesus? So now, Stephen, if you could go ahead and pull up the first picture. So this is the team. Okay. On our left, we have Rachel and Amos. Amos is the 10-month-old son of Rachel. In the middle, we have Nyla. Then on the window seat, we have Carabelle. So Rachel actually lived in Peru for several years and served there full time. Then COVID happened. She came back to the States. She got married and had a baby. But previous to COVID, the ministry in the area where we were working kind of seemed to be slowing down. It seemed like God was kind of drawing them away. And then COVID happened, so it was a blessing in disguise. And so Rachel came home and found a husband. God provided a husband for her, and they now have a 10-month-old baby. And I got to tell you, that kid, he was a champ. I mean, the stuff we did, and no offense to anyone here that's been to Guatemala with us, but the work we did here was so much more tiring. Because in Guatemala, yeah, we're using our hands, we're using our legs, our muscles and whatnot. For me, that's easy. But we had to use our mind in a way that we hadn't been used to, and the drives in between our destinations were quite strenuous. Even though it's kind of like the trip from Guatemala City to San Lucas, it's only 40 miles, but it takes 4 hours to drive. So anywhere we go, it takes a long time to get there. But he was an absolute champ. He cried a few times, but he really also, he took to us as family. He would allow us, myself and Nyla and Carabelle, we could hold him when he was upset, and he would, be as calm as he could. And so this team right here was amazing. We gelled really well. If I had something going on, then Rachel or Nyla or Carabelle would pick up the slack, and just an amazing team. But a little more about Rachel, and I'll read this. This is off of her website bio. It says, Rachel has a deep love for sharing the gospel despite language and literacy barriers. When the Lord opened the door to serve full-time with Signs of Love in 2016, she eagerly packed her bags and went. Rachel now serves Signs of Love as their stateside advocate, illustrator, an art therapy specialist. She also serves as team leader for international trips to serve deaf communities around the world. Signs of Love has a permanent missionary in Honduras, Zambia, and Argentina. And they have part-time workers in Peru, not in the area we're at, but in a city called Trujillo. And I'm going to show you some stuff later about the art therapy because, when I read that, I think, oh, that's neat. But it actually was very, very effective, especially in one of our home visits. Now, the young lady in the middle, Nyla, she is, I think maybe she's a junior or senior at the University of Mary Hardin Baylor. And she's studying history with a Christian studies minor. And she says her goals are, I would love to work in ministry, in some sort of ministry, which can look different depending on where the Lord wants me. Just trying to focus on each day and love it all for the glory of God. I asked them yesterday to share with me what they would want you guys to know about them. And I asked Carabelle, and I expected a couple of sentences, but she sent me a couple of paragraphs. So I'm going to read that to you. Now, she's 14, and she's been to Guatemala. She's been to the area where we've gone, not San Lucas Toliman, but San Juan La Laguna. She's been to Antigua. She's been all over. Her Spanish is pretty darn good, especially her understanding of it. She's also picking up some sign language, which is very cool. But she says about herself, I am 14 years old and so thankful to be blessed by my mom, with a heart for the nations and the Lord, chasing me down over and over and allowing me to pray to Him and sing to Him anytime, every day. I believe my God is the pursuing God, the Father who longs to connect with us and let us know we are loved more than we could imagine. God is also the beautiful God. And so to see Him making those connections with people through the truth of who He is one of the most incredible gifts I could ever be given. In Peru and on various other mission trips, I have gotten to witness this idea of Jesus being in pursuit of His loved children. So I go to grow my love for the Lord in knowledge of what He's doing and to be a part of the way that He makes that connection with people. And that's a 14-year-old young lady that wrote that, which strikes me as very, very wise for her age. Stephen, if you go to the next photo. Here's our team again with Lucho the llama. So Lucho was brought out to the plaza in the city where we were staying, and we got pictures with him. And he was pretty chill llama, pretty cool. All right, next, Stephen. So the lady here that's holding up the ILY sign, this is Anita. She is a deaf woman that lives in the city where we were working, and she's one of those that's been blessed to have a great education, and she really knows how to interact with the hearing world. She goes and does her thing, and she has no trouble getting along. Okay, next. Oh, I'm sorry. Also, Anita, she spent some time with us teaching us some of the differences between Peruvian Sign Language and American Sign Language, because there is overlap, but there are enough differences that if I were just to try to converse with someone, it would be much harder because I don't know those signs yet. This is a gentleman named Pasquale. He's the one that in a little while you're going to see recite Psalm 31 from heart. And as I said, he has Usher's syndrome, which most times children born with Usher's, they are deaf at birth or they go deaf quickly after, and they slowly lose their sight over time. They start by losing their peripheral vision and they get tunnel vision. So if you send him a video, he will do this. He will put his face close to the phone, and he's able to see some things. But super smart guy and very fun to be around. We hung out with him a couple of days. Next picture. So, my first story is of a young lady named Erlita. It's Erlita. Now, this corner is a corner in the city where we were. And if you notice the steps over here to the right, next picture. And here they're to the right. These young men were playing soccer. And there was a drop-off of a cliff, and so when they would kick the ball, sometimes it would go down to the other street, and they would have to run down and get it. But next picture. This is Erlita, and so she met us here. She lived right there, but it seemed that the culture there, you don't really go into their homes a lot. And if you do, there'll be a common area, maybe with a kitchen or a table or whatever, but you don't go into their sleeping areas. And I need to clarify that more, but we didn't ever see anyone's bed, which was really interesting. We didn't go into their personal area. But we did our program that Rachel developed on that corner that you just saw. Like we were literally in the street teaching about John 15, about the parable of the vine, that Jesus is the vine and we are the branches. And each of us had come up with a certain part of it. I did an icebreaker game. You guys, have you ever played the one where you join hands with the person beside you and you have to get a hula hoop across without letting go of the hands? That was our icebreaker game. Nyla was responsible for teaching the vocabulary and playing a memory game that we had. Carabelle had developed a craft where they would color some grapes and some leaves and then make a vine with a green pipe cleaner. And then Rachel typically did the main portion of the Bible teaching. But we did this literally, go back one picture. We did this literally on the side of the road with everyone watching, and this was one of our first ones, so it's very interesting. Okay, now you can go. Okay, next one. Now, this one is where the art therapy comes in. This gentleman right here in the yellow shirt, he's my age. He was born a month before me. His name is Hermann, spelled like German, but pronounced Hermann. He had no language growing up. And I don't know if you've ever studied this, but if as a child you have a window for learning formal language, and if you go beyond that, not having learned language, your brain physically changes. It becomes less plastic, less resilient, and less able to learn language later on. So his communication is grunting and pointing and gesturing and basically playing charades. Next picture. Okay, next one. That's it. I'm sorry. That's him and his son. Go one back. That's him and his son. We had just gotten the ice cream truck, which was a motorcycle with a little thing on the front of it, came by, and we paid 1 sol for each ice cream scoop, and I had about 5 of them that I did not eat them all. They were for the other people, but all right, next picture. So here, we're sitting here, and Rachel is having him draw things. It was very impactful because before we'd even got there, Rachel said, "I'm kind of worried." She said last time she hasn't seen him in 2 years, and she said he lives with his mom and his son. He had a son from another deaf woman who, when she had the baby, she took off, and he lived with his mother and his son. And his mother was well into her 70s or 80s and not not doing great whenever she saw him last. And she said, I'm afraid that we're going to get there and his mother might have passed away. So we got there. We walked around the corner, and he's sitting there making his dinner or whatever, cutting up a tomato. And he looked over, and it took a couple of minutes but he as soon as he internally, when he recognized who it was, just starts bawling. And we knew this. So our plans went out the window. we weren't going to get much done in the way of the program, but we just mourned with him. We cried. We knew exactly, even though I didn't know how to communicate with him super well. We knew what he was saying. He described it and showed us that his mother had passed away. And it turns out it was almost a year to the day, the anniversary of when she had passed, when we came to his house. And so we just mourned. And, scripturally we're called to bear each other's burdens. And if you think about it, he's got tons of family. Everyone who lives around him is his cousin or aunt or uncle, but they don't know anything about how to communicate with him. All they know is that he can't talk, and he doesn't. They look at him as someone who's unintelligent, and he had no one to grieve with him in a way that he understood. So we just took the time, and we all cried. And I am not a crier, guys. Not because I try not to. It's just I typically don't cry. But let me tell you, that day, that was my crying day. That was one of them. I think I did more crying in Peru than I have in the United States total. So anyway, Rachel had him draw his mother. He had some pictures of her, and she had him draw his mother, and he would draw it. And then she would draw Jesus next to her in life, next to her in death. And I'm really, I know God has it under control, and God can communicate through Herman in a way that we never could. And so I really think it eased his mind with that. So that was one of our early trips. Okay, Stephen, next one. Here we are again. We're talking to him and doing the program. Okay, next. And that she was just almost as broken up as he was, because Rachel has such a deep love and affection for people that it really affected her as well. Next. So now this was an interesting one, because this is Maria, and I'm not sure how old Maria is. She has a son who is 16 or 17. She also has Usher syndrome, and even more of her vision is gone than of Pasquale's, who I mentioned earlier. But her parents, Julio and Julia, raised her. Didn't have much of an education, probably none at all. She's almost completely blind, and so any communication with her had to be through touch. And here in the States, we actually have a form of sign language called tactile. And you see the interpreter here is moving her hands. Well, for a person who needs tactile, they will stand in front of you and lightly touch your hands. And they know, based on the shape and the movement, and they know what you're communicating. Well, you can't really do that in Peru, because they don't have that codified system like we have here. So it was just a lot of, just doing the best we can with what we were given. But go to the next picture, Stephen. I didn't get a lot of frontal pictures of this one, but this was us playing the matching game with her son Julio. Now her son came about through an assault. She was raped, became pregnant, and gave birth to Julio. And Julio actually goes to school. So he goes to school and he has learning. But you can watch him because he also has ushers. And when you hand him something, he looks directly at it and puts it very close to his face. And so we went through the program with them, and he was so fun. He would do where he would put his hand out, and then when you go to high five him, he would do like this. And he just loved playing. He was super fun. Okay, next. So this is us outside the principal's office of the school. I told them to look like they got in trouble. So that's go to the next one. So this young man is Alexis. Now, we initially went to the school on one of the days, and we were hoping. What's happened in the past is, Rachel, we go to the director and we say, hey, we would like a few minutes with your kids. And they would say, okay, no problem, come on. But we actually arrived the week before their major festival for the independence of Peru. And they were doing their testing. They were about to go on vacation. So he said, you guys can come back tomorrow after school and we'll try to get the message out and the kids, maybe they can stay after school. Well, only one got to stay after school, but his name was Alexis, and this kid was super sharp. He goes to school with Julio, the one I mentioned before. They go to the same school. But Alexis was very sharp, and we were in the little entryway to the school where the secretary sits. So we did the program there. All right, next, Stephen. And there he is right there with the whole team. Okay, go ahead. So the day after that, we went to an area called Chichir. And this young lady, the one in the yellow shirt with the pink sweater, she's deaf, and she has another sibling that's deaf. We didn't get to do the program with her. She had responsibilities. She had to take her goats out to pasture, so she wasn't able to do it. There was another young man in the village, but for whatever reason, we couldn't really get the reason out of him, but he didn't want to come with us to the school we were going to go to. But while we were there, the little boy right there on the right, we started noticing that he wasn't really responding to us talking to him. And so Rachel did the signs of love hearing test. We distracted him so he was looking this way, and she went behind him and went, and no response, not one bit. So we discovered a new what Rachel calls a beloved, and he's deaf. And so please be in prayer for him that our discovering this can mean that he can be placed in the right place to go to school and to get an education and learn sign, because they didn't realize that he was deaf. Okay. Next. There he is again. Just a beautiful family. It took him a while to warm up to us. We had all kinds of little treats to give him and things, but he finally did warm up. All right, next picture. Okay, this was a house in the city, one of the cities where we stayed, called Cahabamba. And the young lady in the middle there in front of us is Anayeli, and then her brother is Andre. And we did the program with them. They're both pretty sharp kids. They also go to school. They get an education, and pretty awesome. Next. Now this one was special because Rachel knew of this young man, Luis, and is connected with him on WhatsApp. Well, a few weeks ago, his profile picture changed, and it had a baby in it. And she was like, okay, well, I didn't know anything about this. So we got there, and it turns out that Luis and Paola had a brand new little baby. Now, not sure if the baby is deaf or not. They'll probably take a little while for them to discover that. But his name is David. But the thing is, remember the thing my wife said, if you don't know your own name, How can you know the name of Jesus? They didn't know this baby's name. Their parents had named him and written it down, and they didn't know his birthday, and they didn't know his name. Now, they both sign pretty well. They're not formally educated, but they can sign pretty well. And this, go to the next picture. This was a challenging a time. It was late. If you anyone who knows me, I do not stay up late, guys. I get in bed at 9 o'clock. I like to get in bed by 9, maybe do a little reading and go to sleep. This was super late. It was cold, and that light that you see on there, that wasn't there. I had to I brought a headlamp, and I hung it from a truck above us so that we would have light. And we were sitting in the dirt, and I got to admit, when we first got there, I had a pretty poor attitude. I was like, I am so tired, guys. I don't want to do this. But we pushed through, and we got some really good time with them. Next, please. This one was interesting because this is David. He's in the black shirt, and then his sister, Sarita. There is a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses in the area where we were at, and their influence is very prevalent. Okay, Sarita still follows their ways more so than the Christian ways, and she was openly scoffing at the things we were saying. And it's interesting because Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe that Jesus was crucified like this. They believe he was crucified like this. Okay? So in ASL we sign Jesus like this, and we show him on the cross like this, but they don't. And they don't sign God, they sign Jehovah. Okay? And so the influence in her life was obvious, and she was, like I said, she was very disdainful of us being there teaching about Jesus, and was trying to distract. But Rachel, the amazing teacher that she is, just was like, I'm going for it, and I'm teaching it. And so that was quite an experience. Okay, next, Stephen. Oh, pretty much the same thing. Keep going. Okay, pause it. So that was the last day. The one with David and Sarita was the last home visit we did. I was a little distracted because my mom had gone into the hospital that day, and I was in Peru, so it was a little rough, And you guys can please be in prayer for my mom. Some of you know about that. But I was off holding the baby because he was tired, and I was my focus was split, and so they picked up my slack, and they kept going without me. So that was the last home visit, but there was one more experience that I want to share, and I know I've gone way over what I thought I would, but we went to a church service one night, and it's a pastor who travels around tirelessly. He's itinerant, and we had a church service in a room a little bit smaller than the houses we build in Guatemala. And we had 15, maybe 18 people packed into this room. And the Spirit of God was just incredible. Like, it was, I don't know how to describe it, but we sang, and the pastor preached about loving your wife as Christ loved the church, and afterwards, he called us up there, and I came up there fully expecting they were all going to come lay hands on us, and he goes, "Hey, could you guys pray for my people?" I was like, "Okay, sure." So they came up 4 at a time, and we laid hands on them and prayed for them, and then after that was done, they prayed for us. But just a wonderful experience, like just just beautiful. And it's hard to put into words, but some things you guys can remain in prayer over. A lot of spiritual warfare down there. There were several home visits. Probably half of the ones that Rachel had wanted to get to, we weren't able to because of scheduling or not being able to contact people or whatever. But God is in control of that, and that we sow, we water, but God gives the increase. And so even when, in our view, it didn't go as planned, God can still use that. So be in prayer for that, because there's a lot of Catholicism in the culture. There's the Jehovah's Witnesses are strong down there, and they tend to look for vulnerable groups. And there's very few more vulnerable groups than deaf people, especially in developing countries that don't have the kind of protections that we have here in America. Be in prayer for us, because, like I said, we're looking to move into full-time missions. We may be contacting you guys to see if maybe you want to partner with us in prayer or in support. So just be open to what God has, and I can't wait to go back to Guatemala with you guys. So.